Hi everyone, we continue this series of the Yalkut Yosef, the Halacha of Shabbat, the Halacha of Shabbat from the Yalkut Yosef. Today here I'm live in an area called Ramat Bet Shemesh Daled, here in Israel, in the city of Bet Shemesh. And I'll just give you some scenes. This is a very new area, new populated area. You can see a lot of building work going on. And what better place to share over some words of Torah, some words of Halacha within regards to the Holy Shabbat over here in this place. So let's get started, friends. Just got a coffee, got a bit of nice Israeli music in the background also over here, and we will get started. I hope the connection's going to be good over here. Let's see if there's a view here. It's on the pole over here, but it's always good to see good building work going on in Israel. And this is the second edition of the Yalkut Yosef, and we will start now over here. So we were talking about in the previous session, let's go to the place. We were on Siman 245, just before, naturally, we actually started. It was a very small section where we talked about the partnership between a non-Jewish person and a Jewish person. Now we are in Siman 246 already. We've already covered some good ground over here. I believe it's the 9th or 10th installment of the Halacha series over here. Now we're talking about renting to non-Jews over Shabbat. We're on dealing with this, grappling with this topic over here. Let's see how much we can get covered on this session today. Haschara la'akum b'Shabbat, renting to non-Jews over Shabbat. Sorry about the noise. There's an engine working right next to me inside the place, but let's see. Hopefully, I will come across clear. I'll start a bit. I'll read it in Hebrew and in English. Okay, I'll try and transliterate partly as I go along. Bezrat Hashem. Okay. Im mutar Yisrael שיש לו מונית לשכירה לגוי מערב שבת שיעבור בה בשבת ראה לאל סימן רש מ"ג סיב א'. We learned about this before in another place over here concerning a non-Jewish driver operating Jewish taxi on Shabbat. We learned about this topic. I'll just speak about it in a nutshell. What the problems could potentially be, especially if it's in a Jewish locale, that the onlookers might see that this is a Jewish taxi and he's working on Shabbat. Maybe it's a Jewish driver driving there, some people. But it could be a common practice also, one could argue, that it's very common to rent out the car because the car is just sitting there to a non-Jewish person. But we'll deal with that in the different places. Now we're in Halacha Bet over here. In Siman 246, I'll start it. Ha'ika ledidan kamo shkatav maran b'shulchan aruch shmutar lash'il v'laschir kilav lenochri. אף על פי שנוכרי עושה בהם מלאכת בשבת, מפני שאין אנו מצווים על שביתת כלים. What we're talking about here, as mentioned previously, the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch is that a Jew is not obligated, not chayav, to see to it that his property ceases from melacha on Shabbat. Therefore, a Jew may lend or rent his tools or other possessions, even work tools such as a plow, to a non-Jew, even if he is sure that the non-Jew will perform acts of melacha with them on Shabbat. This is what he's saying over here. Okay. ואפילו כלים שעושים בהם מלאכה כגון מחרשה מותר להשכיר לנוכרי מערב שבת. The only restriction is that the Jew must give the tools to the non-Jew before the onset Shabbat, so that the non-Jew can remove them from the Jew's premises before Shabbat begins. There has to be that threshold of time where the non-Jew can actually take from the Jewish person these different kelim before the onset of the Shabbat naturally. So he goes on further. אבל צריך שייתן לו הכלים בעוד יום, שאם ייתן לו סמוך לחשיכה, הרואה יומה שישראל ציווה לגוי, להוליכה מביתו לרשות הרבים. If the non-Jew will remove them after Shabbat begins, after the onset of Shabbat, it's dark and everything else naturally, an onlooker, we're worried about what other people are going to think, an onlooker might suspect that the Jew told the non-Jewish person to take them from his house on Shabbat itself, which very much is an issue of marit ayin also, so that must be prevented at all costs. Now we're talking about beasts of burdens on Shabbat. Shibitat behematot b'Shabbat. Okay, so what we're talking about here, friends? I'll start now in Halacha Gimel already here on Siman 246. כל איש מישראל מצווה על שביתת בהמתו בשבת, ואפילו אם משכיר לנוכרי את בהמתו מיום א' ונוטל לשכר בהבלעה, גם כן אסור. דסוף סוף מצווה הוא על שביתת בהמתו. What's going on here, friends? The Torah commanded us not to use our livestock naturally to perform acts of melacha on Shabbat, as we learned previously in Siman 245. If a Jew rents his beast to a non-Jew for a full week or more, and even if he's paid the rent in a lump sum, remember, lump sum, if you do a deal in a lump sum with a non-Jew before, there's some basis that this could be okay. He must still make sure that this specific animal is not forced to perform melacha on Shabbat. That's what he starts off over here. Not imo shechzena be'erev Shabbat. Ve'im lo aksira yivkerena beno lebein atzmo kodem Shabbat o yama b'mati kenuya le'eno yudi כדי שינצל מאיסור שביטת בהמתו. ובמוצאי שבת מותר לקבל את הבהמה מידו של נוכרי, ואין צריך לומר לו שהפקירה. Okay, what we're talking about here. Therefore, if a Jew rents a beast over here to a non-Jew, he must make a condition that the animal is to be returned before Shabbat is going to begin. If the non-Jew breaches his contract and does not return the animal, the Jewish owner should, under his breath, renounce ownership, declare it hefka, ownerless. Hefka means ownerless in Hebrew. The animal before Shabbat begins, he's got to maybe say it verbally in his brain. Alternatively, he can declare this animal is now the property of the non-Jew who is holding it. With either declaration, the Jew at this stage, if he's going to do this declaration, avoids transgressing the prohibition of having his animal to do work on Shabbat. When the non-Jew is finally going to return the animal, the Jew may take it back, and he does not have to reveal to the non-Jew that he renounces ownership. So naturally, this renunciation of ownership is going to be done verbally in his brain using lips being said, but he's not going to rally that over to the goy, because otherwise the goy then say, no, this is my animal, go away. Okay, halacha dalet now. תושב חוץ לארץ שיש לו בהמה בארץ ישראל מותר לו לסחרה מערב שבת לנוכרי על מנת שישתמש בה במוצאי שבת של ארץ ישראל שהוא עדיין שבת בחוץ לארץ. So what's going on here, friends? A Jew in Western countries, this is what the second edition introduces us. If a Jewish person is residing in a country west of the land of Israel, and he owns animals in the land of Israel, so he's not living necessarily in Israel per se, but he owns animals in Israel, he may rent those animals to non-Jews to use them after Shabbat in the land of Israel, because at his time it's still Shabbat. But with regards to renting to a non-Jew over here the animal, we're not worried about that. The non-Jew may perform acts of malacha using the animal immediately after Shabbat is over in the land of Israel, even though at that specific time it is Shabbat where the Jewish owner resides. So naturally the Jewish owner is living somewhere else. We're not concerned that during his hours where he is at Shabbat experiencing, his animal in Israel, which is outside of Shabbat, is actually working. So halacha hey over here. Moshel Nachri shebikesh meshchono hayudi et suso lerechev aleb al-Shabbat. Got governor, a non-Jewish governor in the place, and he specifically is going to ask this Jewish person who owns a horse, I want to use it. And you're not allowed to refuse him on the grounds of Eva. Eva is like fear, it's trepidation over here. Okay, because we're talking about governor now. So what's he saying over here? Some poskim rule that the Jewish person may declare before Shabbat that the animal is the property of the non-Jew. I'd assume not revealing to him that it is, that he's renounced ownership. And this will save him from the prohibition of having his animal perform melacha on Shabbat. Other poskim disagree. Remember, back in some cruel countries, they could be very tough of you. Many stories has taken place over the years. If you read the Sipurei Tzadikim, especially in all the countries, where a Jewish person is going to refuse to lend something out to a non-Jew, could cause a lot of problems, unfortunately. Okay. Halacha vav. Mitzvat shivitat be'mato noheket melacha hotza ben bereshut harabim ben b'karmelit. This applies when you between the public domain and a place called the Carmelit over here, of transporting objects in these two domains. Okay, friends. ולכן כל שיש על בהמה דבר הנידון משום מסעוי אסור להוציאה גם בכרמלית. וכל שכן לרשות הרבים שלנו שלדעת הרבה מגדולי הפסוקים חשיבה רשות הרבים גמורה מדורייתא. Okay, so what is it saying over here, friends? Over here. Therefore, if the animal is carrying any load, it may not be taken out in a Reshut Harabim or in a Carmelit. Making an animal carry a load out into today's streets may actually be an issur from the Torah itself, Midoraita. Since many of the great poskim rule that these areas are considered to be Reshut Harabim, according to the Torah law, the Midoraita itself. Okay, so that's why. Halacha Zayin now. מצוות שביצת בהמתה נוהגת גם במי שיקבל עליו שבת מבעוד יום משום תוספת מחול על הקודש ולא רק בשבת עצמו. So there's a concept some people will do, and a very praiseworthy concept, to add tosif time on Shabbat, to bring Shabbat in early. Many people will do that. We're in a situation at the moment where Israel's in a conflict at the moment, to protect our soldiers, to protect the country. Bring in Shabbat earlier, many people are saying to do. Light the candles earlier. So what's it talking about here? If a Jewish person accepts Shabbat upon himself before sunset, adding time from Friday to the Shabbat, he must stop his livestock from any acts of malacha from that time on. That point in time, hasta la vista, you can't work it. It's Shabbat now. The obligation to stop an animal from acts of malacha is a part of its owner's observance of Shabbat. It's a collective thing within regards to Shabbat observance. So one may not do that at that point in time. Now already we're in halacha chet at the moment over here. Yesh omrim she'im הבהמה יוצאת מעצמה אפילו אם יש עליה מסע אין צריך למנוע כיוון שאין ישראל נהנה ממנה. Okay, what if it's going to be a case where the animal is going to go out of its own accord over here? It's going to go out, no one's instructing him, it's an animal at the end of the day. Some poskim rule that if an animal wanders out into the street on its own while it is carrying out some load, the owner does not transgress any prohibition, and therefore he does not have to stop the animal from leaving his premises over here. That's what it says here. כיוון שאינה ישראל נהנה ממנה, ויש חולקים ואומרים שצריך שימנע ממנה לצאת, ולדינה אין להקל בזה להתחילה. לכתחילה, you can't be lenient on this. You've got to take all the measurements to stop this from occurring over here. In this case, it seems like there's no benefits anyway from what the animal is doing. And one should be stringent on this matter. It's not a case where one should have the luxury of being lenient. Okay, Halacha Teti. Remember, all these halachot, double check it. You should look inside always. It's the second edition, we're in 246. Let's continue. We've got some flow here at the moment. Halacha Tet, Siman 246. Ha'ika ledina shesh isur shvitat meimato. Okay, the prohibition, non-Jewish person, the prohibition discussed here applies also to an animal that is owned jointly by a Jew and a non-Jew. So when there's a partnership of the ownership, which we've explained previously, just in the previous session, this also applies. How about Yom Tov, friends? Yom Tov, the Chagim. What's going to be the laws over here? Also, there's this instruction of Shivkat Beimato. If you are living, especially in England or in America, South Africa, you've got 2 days of Yom Tov, 2 days of 2 days of Pesach, 2 days Yom Shvi and Yom Shmini B'Shel Pesach. You've got 2 days of Sukkot. The same rule will apply in those places also. Halacha Yud Aleph. Now we're talking about beasts belonging to women over here, friends. יש אומרים שגם האישה חייבת במצוות שביתת בהמתו ועליה למנוע מבהמת שלא תצא עם מרדעת לרשות הרבים. It also applies to women also, where they can be obligated and have to prevent the livestock from doing work on Shabbat. Okay, let's go on. שמאחר והתורה חייבה את הנשים בזכירת יום השבת, הוא הדין בכל מצוות עשה שיש בשבת שהאישה חייבת. ויש אומרים שאין חיוב על האישה אלא במצוות זכירה בכניסת שבת וביציאתה, אבל לא בשאר מצווה עשה בשבת. והעיקר כסברה הראשונה שגם הנשים מצוות על מצוות עשה שביתת בהמה וכל שיש על בהמה דבר הנידון משום מסעוי אסור להוציאה גם לכרמלית וכל שכן ברשות הרבים שלנו שלדעת הרבה מגדולי הפוסקים חשיבה רשות הרבים גמורה מדורייתא ומצוות שביתת בהמה נוהגת גם במי שקיבל עליו שבת מבעוד יום משום תוספת מחול על הקודש. ולא רק בשבת עצמה. So what's it saying over here, friends? Here in halacha number 11, some poskim rules that women are commanded by the Torah to refrain from having their livestock perform melacha on Shabbat as well as men. Some, it's saying over here, key word. Just as a woman is obligated in the mitzvah to recite Kiddush on Friday evening, even though it is not a matter of mitzvah lo taseh, she is obligated in all the other mitzvot pertaining the Shabbat as well. Therefore, she must see to it that none of her livestock goes out in a Reshut Harabim carrying a pack saddle over here. Pack saddle, naturally, we see the pictures of the animals over there. Other poskim rule that although a woman is obligated in the mitzvot of Kiddush and Havdalah, she is not obligated in the mitzvah to see to it that her livestock not perform halacha. Okay, so it looks like there is a difference here. In practice, we follow the first and stricter opinion that it's the same as men and women, that man and women are equally obligated in this mitzvah. So female rights activists out there, equality activists, yes, they've got to be strict also. Can celebrate. One who accepts upon himself the sanctity of Shabbat before sundown is already obligated to stop all animals from performing melacha, just as they're obligated in all restrictions on the Shabbat itself. So just reiterating that. Okay, we've got 3 more halachot, friends. Let's hope we can continue and make progress on this now. We are now on Halacha Yud Bet. Some nice Israeli music in the background, not to get distracted over here. Halacha Yud Bet. Mutar להשכיר דירה בשכירות חודשית או בשכירות דמי פתח ליהודי מחלל שבת, למרות שהשוכר את הדירה אופה ומבשל, מדליק ומכבה את החשמל כמעשהו בחול. מכל מקום, נכון שהמכשיר יתנה בתנאי גמור בחזרה השכירות. שעל כל פנים לא יחלל שבת בפסיה. Okay, so let's see what it's saying here. We're talking about renting a home or store to a non-observant Jewish person. We know, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily religious all over the world. We hope everyone's going to make teshuvah and will keep Shabbat properly. But in the meantime, we need to know these laws in theory and in practice also, because unfortunately, this situation. We hope everyone will make teshuvah and will be keeping Shabbat. Okay, one may rent a house, whether on a monthly basis or on the basis of key money, to a Jew who is known to desecrate mi mechalel the Shabbat. This is true, although it is obvious that he will bake, naturally, he could potentially cook, and turn electricity on and off on Shabbat, just as he does on weekdays. Even so, it is proper that one stipulate in the lease contract, you've got to make a condition on there, when first renting the premises in, that the lease will avoid desecrating the Shabbat in view of others over here. So you seemingly can't totally preach to him. You can't tell him, you've got to keep this, you've got to keep that. Naturally, we should say that in loving ways, but in the contract itself, you should give him the condition that he should not do this in public. He should not be מחלל שבת בפרהסיה. ומכל מקום, נראה שאם משכיר לו חנות בסביבה יהודית, והסוחר פותח חנותו בשבת, ויש בזה מכשול גדול לרבים, שומע נפשו ירחק מזה, ולא יסמוך על היתרים, ולא ישכיר לו הבית. Okay, so what is saying here? Now we're talking about renting a store to one of these Jewish people in the neighborhood. If one wishes to rent a store in a Jewish neighborhood, to a non-observant Jew, and let's see, the person that's renting it plans to open the store even on Shabbat, and he's going to cause other Jews to come and make purchases on Shabbat, one must avoid renting it to him. Then at that point, if it's a Jewish observant owner, do not rent it to him, especially in a Jewish locale over here. Under no circumstances should one rely on these leniencies of certain poskim regarding this. And this is very dangerous, friends. A lot of people will open up a kosher style place, have it open on Shabbat also, Israeli style, where it's not kosher at all. And it can cause a lot of damage, and a lot of people it's treif even, and obviously naturally Shabbat stop Shabbat. Okay, he adds over here, if there's any leniencies on this, do not rely on it. Okay. Naturally, we're allowed to rent a house to a goy, even though the goy is going to do whatever he pleases. If you're renting it to a goy, this place, you should remove the mezuzah from the house over here. We don't want onlookers to think there's someone publicly desecrating the Shabbat and it's a Jewish house. ומכל מקום, כדי שלא להזיק לשכנים, אין זה מן הראוי להשכיר דירה בארץ ישראל למוסלמי. A very, very important, very key thing. In our times in the land of Israel, it's improper to rent an apartment to any non-Jew, even a Muslim over here. I would thought quite chicane, because of the potential problems that will cause other residents in the building over here. Okay, we are now in Halacha Yud Gimel over here. Now we're talking about office buildings used on Shabbat itself over here. מותר לקנות בית שמכיל משרדים שחלק מהם מושכרים מקבל ישראלים העובדים בשבת, I believe in the ברשות הרבים. Okay, ואין בזה משום לפני עיוור או תיתן מכשול, למרות שהם ימשכו לעבוד בשבת עד תום השכירות, וגם אינו חייב להוציאה מיד בתום השכירות, ואם הדבר יגרום לא הפסד. Okay, so what's he talking about here? If one wishes to purchase an office building and some of the offices are rented out to non-observant Jews who come to work on a Shabbat, one may purchase the building despite this, and one may ignore the fact that his tenants are desecrating the Shabbat until their leases are expired of it. This is not considered a transgression of the prohibition of placing a stumbling block in front of the blind. There's this phrase where we don't want to put a stumbling block in front of someone who can fall on it, that someone will come to desecrate something. If the tenants wish to continue renting those offices for another year or even years, but they refuse to abstain from desecrating the Shabbat, one is not obligated to force them to leave if that would cause a considerable loss. Surprisingly, you're not considered the Yalkut Yosef here, but it's given the key words here, considerable loss. So if there's no loss, then you should have them out, or a small loss, naturally. I'll just repeat those last things. Okay, let's do one last halacha here, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. We are now in Halacha Yudalati on Siman 246. We're talking about commissioning of a non-Jew for production. So what's he talking about, friends? Yisrael shesachar nochri bekablanut liyatzer sabon uminei kosmetika והגוי עובד בביתו גם בשבת ייצור הדברים הנראה לי מותר לאפשר לגוי לעשות כן. Okay, it looks like if someone is going to, if a Jewish person's hiring in a kabbalanut basis over here to manufacture soaps, cosmetics on the non-Jewish premises, it's not in the Jewish person's domain, in somewhere outside of the area, I'd assume. The Jew may allow the non-Jew to even work on the Shabbat days. I don't think he's allowed to stipulate to him, go work on Shabbat, but if it's in the kabbalanut stage, you're not telling him when to work. Okay, let's continue. אבל במכונות גדולות שדרכם להיות מפורסם, אם ידוע שהוא בשביל מלאכת ישראל יש לעשות בזה וצריך למנוע מאינו יהודי שיעבוד בשבת. Okay, if the process involves heavy machinery, because if you've got a factory and you're producing soaps in mass, you might be potentially producing like 100,000 of them. You need heavy equipment. If it involves heavy machinery over here, and other people will notice that he's working and they know that he's employed by a Jew, it should not be permitted. The employer must stop the non-Jew from working on Shabbat in this case. In that case over here, he must stop it from there. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. Siman 246. Next session, we will start the Siman 247, starting about sending mail on Friday. And then we're going to be talking about ship journeys on during the week or on Friday potentially. So guys, have an awesome day. I'd like to dedicate this in memory of Rabbi Leo D's wife and Leah, and two daughters that were murdered in the terrible terrorist attack during Pesach. May these be in their zchut, and wishing you all a fantastic day. I'll leave you some scenes in this amazing city over here, building up work, nice cafeteria and bakery also. Take care, have a great day.